Welcome back to the Real with Joseph Labin. I am Joseph Labin. Hope you guys are having a great week. Yeah, getting warmer outside this week a little bit, getting out of that brutally cold temperatures here in Northeast Ohio. So that's a good sign. But yeah, welcome on in. Um, kind of a on the fly podcast today. I was not planning on doing this, but so much is going on today and coming out of Berea and with Deshaun Watson, the Browns. I had to come on here and break down what I think's going on, what possibly could be going on. So I'm gonna get into that. Before I get into it, though, hit the like, subscribe, and share button, and share this content for me. Hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this content. I'd really appreciate it. And yes, let's get into it. So I'm sitting there today watching the Alta Cleveland Sports Show, right? And I'm sitting there listening to it, and I'm going to do my usual morning stuff, and little under the weather a little bit, but I'm getting better. I've actually feel a lot better today. So, anyways, so I'm just sitting there relaxing, going do my normal, morning stuff. I'm listening to what they're saying, seeing what the latest is, which part of what I do now. I have to keep up with all this stuff every day so I can present the best content, what I think is going on to you guys, to my viewers. So, I'm listening to Garrett Bush. Garrett Bush is one of my favorite reporters out there, and especially in Cleveland, one of the realists, one of the only ones that will really go out and really investigate things and give an honest opinion what's going on, what he thinks. And it's not afraid to question things. Um, that's no shot at any other reporters. I think there's a lot of good media members out there, but I think a lot of times media members are afraid to say certain things or question things because they're afraid to lose access to uncovering the team in certain ways. But that's just my opinion, and others as well. So, and people who used to coach and used to deal with this stuff have said the same thing on both college and NFL level. But anyways, so I'm listening to Garrett Bush, right? And Garrett Bush breaks down this Deshaun Watson podcast over the weekend on, I think it's called Lockverse, I believe, with Quincy Avery, his quarterback coach, and Cam Newton. And I saw part of this. I saw this when it came out because I subscribed to the channel just to keep up with this stuff. And I wasn't going to listen to the full thing. I listened to some of it. But Garrett and Earl, who's a guy who works over at Alden Cleveland Sports Show, who I follow on his Instagram, on his social media. He's a great guy, by the way, young up and coming star in this industry. I think, especially local Cleveland media personality and covering the team. Uh, Great guy, Earl is. I like following his stuff. But anyways, Garrett and Earl found this little nugget though in this podcast that was kind of swept under the rug by the media over the weekend. I don't know, maybe like Garrett said, maybe because it was Friday, so I didn't really get to hit the feed going into the weekend. But man, did Deshaun Watson spill a little nugget? I think, and I think Deshaun Watson and Jay Crawford said something today I totally agree with that. Jay's worked in corporate. He's worked in the big time media for a while. He worked in ESPN for all those years. He knows how a lot of stuff works. When players say certain things, let certain things out, either player or front office, it's pretty obvious for things don't just come out of thin air. Things aren't just said for no reason. And Deshaun Watson said something on Friday, fresh out of all this stuff last week, where Kevin Stefanski Kevin Stefanski fired AVP, and I say allegedly because I don't know what's really going on, who's running what. To be honest with you, but the Browns, we'll just say the Cleveland Browns let go of Alex Van Pelt and let him go. I don't think he was fired. I think he was let go, and Stump Mitchell, a longtime running back coach, and their tight end coach as well. And it was gonna be this big thing. Last week Mike and I talked about it, philosophical change on offense and all this stuff. And Mike and I were thinking on Friday in my show that, maybe this is to help build around Deshaun, because I've said all along, I don't think the system, the West Coast, Gary Kubiak, old school offense really fits Deshaun's skill set. And in order for the Cleveland Browns to win and be successful and achieve their goal of winning the Super Bowl, Deshaun Watson has to be in the best situation possible. And I don't think thus far he has been since he's been here. He has not been in the best system and the best anything really possible um, to get him back to that elite status. And unfortunately, he had an injury this year that hindered him, and he had to miss the rest of the season because of it. And then the year before with the suspension, 12 games, you guys coming fresh off the street and coming to play in an NFL game after he hasn't played in almost 700 days. The guy has never really got going. But is he really being set up to succeed? Because your coach and the organization's job is to help this guy. Granted, you traded for him and you gave up all his assets, but you did it for a reason. All right, you did it for a reason. You had to make a move at that time 2 years ago because Baker Mayfield had a great year this year in Tampa, but you saw at the end of the game yesterday, that's why you don't really pay a guy like that long-term franchise quarterback money. He could be a good. I think if I'm Tampa, I probably would bring him back another year or two and draft a kid. I think he's great for that. But is he your long-term solution to win a Super Bowl? Is he the reason why you'll get to a Super Bowl year in and year out, like a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or guys like that? No, he's not. But that's why you went out and got a guy like Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson has the skill set and the talent to do so and has proven success in college. He was a winner. And in the NFL, before all the stuff happened, he thrown for 4,800 yards, leading the league, led the league in passing yards that year, or maybe it was first or second. And you just see with Deshaun, with his skill set and his talent, he's a winner. Led to Houston to playoff appearances, won the division over there. And so I believe won a wild card game as well. And so Deshaun Watson, they had to make the move to go get him. And he was available, and they paid the contract to get him. Although I get why at the time people thought the contract was crazy, because you're like, this guy hasn't really earned a 230 something $1 million contract yet. But I think they kind of got ahead of it, and kind of looking at the market now, there's guys that have been gotten paid more since then. I think that are worse quarterbacks. And I think eventually we're going to be in a league where the quarterback has its own salary cap, but that's a whole other thing. But anyways, so the Browns had to make the move, right? But ever since then, I don't think they've, done a good job of surrounding and helping him get back to his form. And a lot of that is due to, well, people might think that's crazy. I'm not saying behind the scenes they haven't helped him. I'm saying they have done some things. They helped him with his personal stuff. They helped him. I'm sure they helped him in a lot of ways. But in terms of football, we're talking football. He has not been put in a situation to succeed because it doesn't fit. Kevin Stefanski's philosophy and offense, this old West Coast generic offense, it's kind of ran its course. It's not. I mean, and people were talking about over the weekend too. I heard somebody say too. You go back and you watch that game versus the Houston Texans, and D'Amico Ryans is telling his linebacker in the middle of that game, just stay there, like the ball's gonna be coming to you. And eventually he got the pick. They got the interception. But the offense itself, it's been around so long that people have kind of the league has figured it out. They know how to identify it now. They know how to approach it and how to defend it. It's kind of a generic offense that they try to add little trick plays and little sweeteners to it. And then when they didn't work this year because they were awful, they just reverted back to the generic stuff. And it's just not it's not really set up for Deshaun to succeed. And I don't think it's really set up for this team to ever get over the hump. I mean, as far as they made his divisional round where they couldn't beat a Chad Henne, subbing in, and then going back to this year, you were favored against the Texans. Everybody was picking you to win. There's people telling the Texans that they had no shot, and you got annihilated 45-14, and were completely outcoached, outmanned, outschemed, unprepared, everything. And you look at all that game, right? And I think there's a reason why we've only made it so far, because it's only built to go so far. This isn't built to get over the hump. And you have a guy that you gave all those draft picks up for, who I believe and a lot of people believe, and I agreed that when they made the trade at the time, I was agreed with it because they had to do it. He gave them the best chance to win with who was available in the market, and you went and got him, and you had to do it. But you're not doing a great job of setting them up to succeed, setting the team up to succeed. And that goes back to coaching. That goes back to the head coach, Kevin Stefanski. Now, Kevin Stefanski did a phenomenal job this year of keeping that team together, and with all the injuries they had, and for them to rip off 11 games and still make the playoffs, phenomenal. And that's probably why a lot of people think he's going to win his second coach of the year. Great. But is he really the guy that can get you over the hump? Which is why when they lost that game 2 weeks or a week and a half ago to the Texans, we came on live that night, our highest rated live we ever had. And I asked everybody, because that was my takeaway from that game. Walking away from that game versus the Texans, I said, I don't know if this guy's the guy who can get us over the hump. And I asked everybody that night, and I said, and a lot of people gave the same answer that people in the media and people in the fans are giving. Well, you can't fire him because he's coach of the year. And I asked people, do you think he's the guy that can lead you to a Super Bowl? And every single buddy I asked that night said no. Every one of them, no. So my question is, what the hell are we doing then? Because if you look at the Browns' timeline, they're getting older. They're still around. They're in their prime, but each year you're getting older. You've had Kevin for 4 years now, right? Guys are getting older. That contract going into year 3 now with Deshaun Watson, and you haven't really done anything yet with it, with that whole, with the Watson experiment. And here we are going into year 3 with a lot of questions, and you're kind of like, they haven't really found their identity yet offensively. Defensively, they found it with Jim Schwartz. But offensively, they have not found it yet. They just haven't. And there's a reason why a guy like Joe Flacco looked great in Stefanski's offense, because it's a basic offense. And he was able to come off the street and win some games, and they played some teams that they should have beat, teams that were already out of the playoff race, and they snuck in, and they got in, and they did well, they didn't sneak in, but they did what they were supposed to do, really, with the talent they have. But it wasn't enough in the playoffs. It wasn't enough when you needed it most. A rookie team with a rookie head coach and quarterback figured it out in the Houston Texans. That speaks volumes to me. And so, looking at all this, right? All everything I laid out with Deshaun Watson and the fit, which, by the way, after his second game back from the 700-day layoff, remember the first game was back in Houston, right? And he looked very rusty. They won the game, but he was rusty. We go back to the next week on the road at Cincinnati. Remember that game? The game where Deshaun Watson was taken out. With Deshaun Watson in the first drive of that game for the Browns, I think completed 3 passes, was getting in rhythm, and it was like a 4th and 1. And Kevin Stefanski pulls Deshaun Watson out. They pulled a $230 million investment out of the game and put Jacoby Brissett in because Jacoby was running the QB sneaks all year, and they didn't even run a QB sneak. To this day, it still is baffling to me that what happened that day. And Jacoby, remember, it was a play action pass. Jacoby throws it, and he overthrows the tight end, who wasn't even receiving tight end either. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, you just pulled out the $230 million guy who hasn't played 700 days, and you pulled him out of the game. What does that say to him? How can, as a player, I'm supposed to be the guy. If it's 4th and 1, I'm out there. Does Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Justin Herbert or Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers, do all these top guys, did they ever get to Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre? Did any of them ever get taken out of the game on a 1 yard line or on a 1 yard completion on 4th and 1 or 3rd and 1? No, they're your franchise quarterback. You ride or die with him no matter what. And it's not like Deshaun can't get a QB sneak either. He's athletic enough. He's 6'3", 6'4", 225 pounds. And I get at the time, and I'm only going back to this because I said something after that game that has always stuck with me. And this is what I said on my show the day after that game on Monday. This was my analysis and why I said back then, almost over a year ago, this was not going to work with Kevin Stefanski. Here's what I said right here. So here's the problem. And going back to the coaching, this is why I say yesterday I have a different tone on not just the game itself, but the whole organization as a whole and what they need to do going forward. You can't expect one guy to just bail you out all the time. And he hasn't played in the 700 days because that's kind of the road they're starting to trend down. And that's not a road you want to go down. And so, again, let's get back to Kevin Stefanski and why I'm saying now I think Kevin Stefanski is on the hot seat. It should be on the hot seat, right? Now, again, I've tried to get Kevin Stefanski so many passes. I like Kevin Stefanski in a lot of ways. I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I just don't know if he's... sometimes you just question, is this guy, does he show head coaching qualities a lot of times? Because offensively, I think he's a pretty good offensive coordinator for for the most part. He's good at calling some things consistently. Now, the only thing I would knock him down, he doesn't get the big playmakers up the ball. He doesn't get his big offensive playmakers the ball enough. And sometimes you're just kind of like, yeah, we know you got a nice system. You can call some nice plays here and there. And what I mean, he throws some nice games. He'll call some nice games rather. You go back to when he was in Minnesota. He did a pretty nice job. He was solid. He's a solid play caller. But sometimes you just kind of wonder, does he make the team great? And I thought of something. I heard somebody say this earlier. If you put Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, any of these guys on our offense, they might just look like average players, not by their own doing. So that's what I said back then. And before I went on that rant there, I was in another rant before that talking about that debacle where he took him out of the game and put Jacoby Brissett in. And I said, what do you think Deshaun thinks about that? And I said at the time back then, it wasn't a good look. And I came away from that game that day, his second game back that year. I remember I was saying to myself, this ain't going to work, because you could just see the difference in Deshaun and Kevin and the philosophical difference. And I kind of laid out there too that day why I thought too Kevin maybe isn't the guy that can get you over the hump, was kind of what I was getting at that day. Can the great players be their best? And so can they play at their best? You know what I mean? Can they, because that's what there's a difference between being good and good enough, which is kind of what they were this year, and being great and getting over the hump. You know what I mean? And being a true Super Bowl contender year in and year out. And so Kevin Stefanski as well, if you look at Kevin Stefanski's philosophy offensively too, with the system he runs, it's kind of that old school system, kind of outdated in a little way. You look at that, and also you look at the Browns, I believe this year were top 5 at least. I can't remember the exact stat, but they were top of the league in first drive scored on. What does that mean? That means, understands coaching, your first about 20 plays usually are scripted. They're scripted plays. Your first drive is always scripted. And so the Browns and Kevin Stefanski are great with scripted plays. But if you watch a lot of their games this year, the Seattle game, where they didn't run the ball to Nick Chubb there, and they tried P.J. Walker throwing the ball. Many other games this year. Go back to the Steelers game. Go back to, those games alone. There was a couple other games. The P.J. Walker game, or I believe it was a P.J. or Dorian Thompson-Robinson's first game, excuse me, which I'm going to go back to later against the Ravens. Right? We've seen some other games in the past where we've questioned play calling in the show many, many times in our lives after the games, where you're just kind of like decision-making just didn't add up. And so with saying all that, Deshaun Watson made a statement on that podcast, like I mentioned, on Friday, I believe it was, where Quincy Avery asked him a question about, they're talking about game managers and guys who aren't game managers, but also he asked Deshaun here, what does Deshaun like? And Deshaun kind of gives you, like I said, so I just said, we know what Kevin Stefanski likes to do. He likes to script a lot of his plays. They're top 5 at least. I can't remember the exact number, but they're top 5 in the league this year and first drive scored on. Okay. So you see the trend there. You see there's Kevin's philosophy. Well, here's what Deshaun thinks about it right here.
Both of you guys, do y'all think that maybe sometimes not being a game manager held you back because you both have tremendous ability to do things outside of schedule, and just not playing on schedule might have hurt you in your career?
You go first, too. I say for me, I think not necessarily in a full game, but the first half of the game. Because Cam, a lot of time, I'm not sure if your OCs did it, but the first 15 plays, first 20 plays
already started.
Yeah, you know what that is. So you're trying to play within that. All right, this is where the ball usually go. You go throughout the week. You go throughout the different looks. All right, this here. I never been a fan of that, just because I know the other team's gonna adjust quick, and I gotta adjust because they're not gonna play me the same way like the other quarterback. They're not gonna play me the same way like Brock Purdy. You feel me? They're not gonna play me the same way like a tool because I can use my legs, I can run, I do a lot more movement in the pocket, things like that. So like for me, I think like the first half, like I'm trying to figure it out, and like I start off slow, but once that third and fourth quarter come around, now you just calling your best plays. You trying to make some shit work, and you got to make your playmakers got to make plays, especially in that fourth quarter. Absolutely.
So that's what Deshaun Watson said last week on the podcast with Cam Newton and Quincy Avery. And you look at a lot of what he said there. He said he doesn't like it, number one, but also the part where he says the coach will tell you go here, go here, go here. And basically what he's saying too is the defense will pick up on it quick. And a lot of times coaches, if they keep going along with that scripted stuff and telling the quarterback what they want, you got to run my system the way I want it. You got to just find a way to fit in, which is I think kind of what we've seen here with Deshaun and Kevin Stefanski, which is why I think there's been a clash philosophically. I mean, that's pretty telling what Deshaun said. And Deshaun's very calculated, like a lot of athletes. Like Jay Crawford said today. Jay Crawford's worked in ESPN for all those years. He knows, he said it. He goes, I know what this means because I've seen this before. Deshaun knew what happened last week, obviously, with the coaching changes, and Deshaun knows what's going on right now. And there was some OCs being thrown out. And I think it was Andy Dickerson, I think's his name, and some other guys I've interviewed, Ken Dorsey, and guys who aren't really proven as offensive coordinators, to be honest with you. Not like big names. And so there was also some rumors last week too, which I said on the show, that Kevin Stefanski could be giving up play calling and a lot of this stuff. And you kind of put all this together. You take what Deshaun said, though. Deshaun's calculated. Deshaun knows what he's doing, okay? He said what he said. He said at this time, the question was thrown out there by Quincy Avery. I don't think this was a mishap by any means. And Deshaun's these athletes are pretty calculated. They know what they're doing, okay? He pretty much told you, though, what he wants and what he likes. And he's the investment. He's the ticket to this team getting over the hump and winning the Super Bowl in the window they have. And so he just told you what he likes. But also, too, if you look at Kevin Stefanski, a lot of times, our criticisms on this show, on the Lies, is the lack of adjustments at times. And those bad losses they have, or games where the offense looks like just complete garbage and just stagnant, there's no adjustments being made. They just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And you saw it this year with Alex Van Pelt and Kevin Stefanski together. They tried throwing in these little wrinkles, these little trick plays, and they kept running them. And eventually they didn't work, like the jet sweeps and with Elijah Moore or Goodwin and all these guys. And they were just trash plays. And all they were doing was, we were told last year, or we were told going into the season last summer, oh, there's this great new offense. You know what I mean? It's dynamic now. They completely different. They changed it and blah, blah, blah. And all we saw this year was the same thing with a couple trash plays, trick plays. That's all we saw. It's like I told Mike on our show the other day. If you take a piece of shit car that's a junker, and it looks like shit, it's all rusted out, and you repaint that thing on the outside, put a nice paint job on it, makes it look a little better, the car's still a piece of shit because the engine's old, probably don't work. You know what I mean? It's still a shitty car. And that's kind of what we're seeing here with this offense. That's what we saw this year. It's the same thing. Now, Joe Flacco, there's a reason why Joe Flacco could come off the street after not playing all year and look as good as he did in those games, those 6 games, because it's a very generic offense. That's why. It's a very, now that's not a bad thing. I think that's a good thing in a way. It's more simpler offense. I think you saw guys like Baker played for Sean McVay last year. He played pretty well. We've seen, I think, any quarterback you put in Kansas City with Andy Reid's system, they usually look pretty good. That's a good sign. But when it mattered most, it didn't look good in that game, that playoff game. They turned the ball over a lot this year. And so, and you go back and look at Andy Reid in that playoff game versus us in 2020, Chad Henne could step in, and old Chad Henne, and get the job done, and they still win the divisional round game. So there's good, and then there's great. We're just good. We're good enough. But based on Deshaun's comments, right, and everything I broke down earlier in this show, you can clearly see now there's a philosophical divide. and that Deshaun's skill set does not fit what they need to do. Or Deshaun's skill set does not fit what Kevin wants to do, and that's hindering what they need to do, which is obviously get over the hump. If that makes sense. Let me rephrase. I messed that up there. Deshaun Watson's skill set does not fit what Kevin Stefanski's been trying to do, which is going to hinder them. It's hindering them from what they need to do and what they need to do to be successful and be a real legit contender in the playoffs. Because it doesn't fit. And I said that after my reaction to the Steelers game earlier in the year. The second week when the game where Chubb got hurt and that bad loss, I put in the thumbnail, I said identity crisis. And I said that day with my dad and Mike, who were on the show, it's just not going to work. They don't mesh. You could see it. And you go back to the game this year against the Cardinals, where Deshaun threw that beautiful pass to Amari Cooper. It was off script. He called it himself out on the field. When you go back and watch that game versus the Ravens, that second half, it was a lot of off script stuff. Scrambling out wide, throwing, making something out of nothing, scrambling for the first down. It was kind of just Deshaun being Deshaun, and which won them the game. None of those. I mean, remember the touchdown in that game too. Elijah Moore. He scrambled out left and he threw the ball. That second half by Deshaun, a lot of it was him doing his own thing. Really, if you break down the tape and watch it, it's just that's his natural. That's what he does. He makes something out of nothing. He's one of the best play extenders in the league. It always has been. And so you put all this together, and then we go to Andrew Berry today. Right, Mr. Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry had his little, press conference today about recapping the season and where they're going to go moving forward, and kind of like a State of the Union. And one of the quotes they put on the thumbnail of the video on the Browns YouTube page was too from the press conference: "We'll attack 2024 with a quote fresh perspective." Now, what does all this mean? Deshaun's comments, right, and everything I broke down today. You can clearly see the philosophical divide now within the building. They're looking for an offensive coordinator. Is Kevin Stefanski going to hand over the play calling, all this stuff, right? So today, Andrew Berry talked. Andrew Berry said, right here, as you can see, let me put it full screen. Give me uno momento. All right, there we go. So this is from Mary Kay Cabot. So we'll go to this one first. Let's see. Let's go to here. Browns GM, right here. We'll click on it. Browns GM Andrew Berry, if Kevin Stefanski will call plays. Part of that depends on where we land with the staff. It's one of his strengths. He says it's Stefanski's decision. Now, they read this on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show today, and I agree with what they said. What this is basically telling, what Andrew Berry basically said right there, if you know how to read between the lines, is they're pretty much telling Kevin Stefanski, we don't want you to call plays, and it kind of depends on who we hire. So look at what he says. Part of that depends on where we land with the staff. We land with the staff. We is a key word there. It's one of his strengths. He says it's Stefanski's decision. Well, that doesn't make sense if you read it like that, because that's why I say you have to look between the lines, because if you're saying it's where we land as a staff, it's one of his strengths. Like, we like Kevin. We think he's a good play caller, but it also depends on who we can hire. And then say it's Kevin's decision. You're kind of like saying like, well, if it doesn't work out, it's Kevin's fault. That's how it comes across to me. But also, I think too, I don't think Kevin Stefanski was the guy that's really been pushing all this behind the scenes, firing Alex Van Pelt and moving off of some of those guys like Stump Mitchell and the tight ends coach. Really, AVP is the big one. I think this is an organizational thing, and I think they're pushing for a change. And you're looking based off Deshaun's comments, I think this is a collaborative effort that's happening in Berea. And I think collaborative in terms of the offense that they've been running for all these years has to go, because it doesn't fit, and it's old and it's generic, and it's time to evolve and to elevate the offense, right? But Andrew Berry's answer there basically saying part of that depends on where we land with the staff. It's one of his strengths, and then says it's Kevin's decision. Well, you just said part of that depends on where we land with the staff. We land with the staff, and then you say it's his decision. Like I said, that just they don't add up. So I think they pretty much told Kevin that, in my observation of this, and going to the next tweet from Mary Kay, this is the other one today from the press conference. We don't want you calling plays, Kevin. We want to change the offense, and if you, Kevin, agree to not call the plays anymore, then we'll do this right here. We'll give you the extension you want. So what did Andrew Berry say about that today? Brown's Andrew Berry on if Kevin Stefanski will receive an extension soon. Quote, we're really happy with Kevin. She puts in parentheses, Mary Kay's been around a long time. Wouldn't answer directly like he doesn't for players. So he wouldn't really get into it. Now he did give Kevin a lot of praise today. You know, Kevin should be coach of the year and blah 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 and all this. But to just say, quote, we're really happy with Kevin. You know, it wasn't like they didn't really go all out and say definitively like, yeah, this is our guy. Like, you know, we're going to sign him long term. And, you know, if we're going to talk to Kevin, what Andrew Berry really should have said was, you know, we really like Kevin, and you know we'll discuss that with him about talk possibly of a long term extension here coming up, and blah blah blah. Which Andrew Berry has said about other players and stuff in the past. Now he doesn't really get into it, but they're usually when you like somebody, you'll make it pretty clear. But he just said we're really happy with Kevin. It's kind of like a relationship with somebody. You know, you can be happy with somebody, but you know, you look around the corner and. Or you look around, you're around somebody else, you think, well, yeah, I'm happy with this person, but the other person over there kind of fits me a little more. You know what I mean? I feel like they can kind of take, you know what I mean? I feel like things would be a lot better. Things that, I can go to a higher level in my life, and, that person fits me, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like in a job or a relationship or any different way. We could be happy in a scenario, but doesn't mean there's always better out there. That's what's really meant for us, and what's really, what actually would make us greater in terms of a job or relationship or whatever, right? I think that's kind of what he's saying there to me. You look at Deshaun's comments, look at Andrew Berry's comments. You kind of look at all this together. I agree with what they said all the Cleveland Sports Show today. I think, like I said, I think they're pretty much telling Kevin Stefanski, we'll give you an extension or give up play calling, and here's an extension. And if Kevin says no, we got a problem. Now, why do I say that? Because if you look at all the stuff I broke down today, right? Deshaun's comments, Andrew Berry's press conference today, kind of the lead up, the history of the Browns and Deshaun Watson since he's been here. I think they're at a point now where it's kind of ran its course with these two together, to be honest with you. And I don't, if Kevin won't give up play calling, then firing Alex Van Pelt was useless. Because he's just going to do the same thing. He's going to go out and hire Kubiak's son in San Francisco, or hire some yes guy, but he's going to do the same thing. Kevin knows what he knows. This is the system he came up in. This is the system he's ran. This is the system that he's been calling plays in since he's been here, since he was in Minnesota. He's not going to change drastically, because all you're doing is just hire another. All he's going to do is just hire another Alex Van Pelt if he's not going to give up play calling. And so, based on that one though, right here, let me go back. This comment right here was the big one from Andrew Berry. This one that I pointed out. Part of that depends on where we land with the staff. It's one of his strengths. Then he says it's Kevin's decision. And that just doesn't add up if you really read between the lines, because, like I said, I'm going back to this because, to me, they're pretty much telling you what's going on between the lines. And so I think Kevin has to not only give up play calling, but they got to hit a home run with that offensive coordinator. And the names they've interviewed so far, the quarterback coach for the Texans, who I like, I think it's a good coach, and Ken Dorsey and Andy Dickerson, and those are good coaches, but they've never called plays before. They're not proven offensive coordinators. And we're not in a situation where you really should hire a guy like that with Deshaun Watson. You need to win now. Remember, that's what I thought was going on. We're supposed to win right now, and we have a window here to win now. You're going into year 3 of that contract. He's coming off an injury. He hasn't played a full season yet. Guys are getting older. The cap's going to start hitting you a little bit. You have to win right now. You can't piss around with some first-time offensive coordinator and let's just see if it works. That's a recipe for failure. And they'll be rebuilding next year, not holding a Lombardi. So, I don't know, man. Look, Deshaun made his comments too. If you look at what's happened, go back to that Ravens game earlier this year, week 4. Remember that? Remember what Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt and kind of that whole debacle with that thing that day, and how Kevin Stefanski's comments about Deshaun Watson, after that, I can't remember the exact quote. Remember that whole thing where, Deshaun showed up, warmed up, he didn't want to play, or he didn't say he wanted to play. Kevin said, I can't remember the exact quote. I think Kevin said that he basically threw Deshaun under the bus in week 4 after that. Now, some people say he didn't, but people that he threw him under the bus. And I don't think they've been the same since then. And Alex Van Pelt was also part of that as well. I can't remember. I'm trying to Google here the exact quote, but you guys remember that whole thing though, where Kevin Stefanski said what he had to say about Deshaun and with that whole thing. And I remember it was that Monday after. I think he said it was Deshaun's decision. And basically what he did, he kind of made Deshaun look like he quit on his team and didn't want to play. But then we found out later on that it was supposed to be they all agreed together. But then he made those comments after. It was a whole debacle. And then Andrew Berry spoke on it after that too at the bye week, and said something else that you're just kind of like, I can't remember the exact because I have to refresh my memory. But there was that whole debacle in week 4 with the Ravens, and you guys know what I'm talking about. We did a video on it. You can go back and watch it. Go Google it. I'm not gonna dig up the exact quote right now, but I remember coming, and even on national TV, I remember Richard Sherman said earlier in the year after that if you're Deshaun Watson, how do you feel about your coach now after what he kind of threw you under the bus? But if you look at what's happened, to look at Deshaun's comments on Friday, who's been out so far? Oh, AVP's gone. AVP is out of the building. He's not here anymore. And Kevin Stefanski looks like he's been kind of put on the microscope a little bit internally. We don't want you calling plays anymore, Kevin. And those two were the two guys that did that back in week 4. And one of them's already out the door. And you look at Deshaun's comments, what he likes, how he likes his offense to go as a quarterback. On Friday, he told you, and you look at Andrew Berry's things. Just stay with me here. Look at Andrew Berry's comments today, right? And then you look out yesterday, right before last night, actually, rather, before the Andrew Berry's press conference today, this article gets thrown out there publicly about Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk. And Mike Florio says other potential suitors are lurking for Bill Belichick. Now, Bill Belichick, as it says right here, many league circles believe Bill Belichick is the frontrunner for the Falcons' job. The Falcons regard the situation otherwise, as they continue to conduct interviews and have no frontrunners yet. And the Falcons are also interviewing Jim Harbaugh again for a second interview. Jim Harbaugh is supposed to be the Chargers head coach, and it's supposed to be a done deal. I don't think the Chargers want to pay Jim Harbaugh what he wants paid, and that's just my opinion. They're historically cheap organization. And I don't think the Charger job was actually as attractive to these guys as the media is trying to hype it up to be, because it's LA. They're in cap hell. They're old. they got some hurdles to go through out there in LA. Just because you're in LA don't mean it's just going to magically just, take off. But again, you look at this report here, though, last night from Mike Florio, right? And what does Mike Florio say here? So he said there's other potential suitors. And look at this right here. Per league source with knowledge of the situation, multiple teams are quietly considering a potential run at Bill Belichick. At least one currently has a head coaching vacancy. At least one currently does not. Let me repeat. At least one currently does not. So you put all this stuff together, right? You put all this stuff I've laid out today, and you look at Andrew Berea and Deshaun Watson's comments. Andrew Berea's today, Deshaun's on Fridays. And you look at AVP's gone now. They fired him out of the building. Right? And now we're hearing all this stuff about we need to change our offensive identity and Kevin giving up play calling and will Kevin get an extension? They won't really say. You look at all this stuff, and then you look at Kevin and Andrew Berea's thing today. Quote, we'll attack 2024 with a fresh perspective. Put all this together, and what does that lead to? I think it could be leading to we might see some change happening in Cleveland. I'll just put it like that. It's pretty obvious. I mean, I think that the Browns, I would not be surprised if the Browns were that team, like it says right there in that article. At least one currently does not. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns are that one team. Because you know who else works for the Cleveland Browns? It was hired right before the season. Do you know who that is? He's a coaching executive, the coaching executive, and the wrote it down there. Senior consultant for Andrew Berea, and he's coaching executive for the team. You know who that is? That right there, Mr. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Bob Quinn right here. Who is Bob Quinn, you might ask, if I can talk. Who is Bob Quinn, you might ask? Bob Quinn is a Bill Belichick disciple. Bill Belichick was Bob Quinn's mentor in New England early on in his career, in his NFL career. And what is his job? Senior advisor to Andrew Berea and coaching executive. So put 2 and 2 together. I'm not saying Andrew Berea is getting fired. I'm not saying the Browns are going to hire Bill Belichick. I'm not saying any of that. As far as I know, Andrew Berea, they might just, or the whole organization might just be saying, Kevin, we want to hire a coordinator. And Kevin said, I'll give up play calling and hoorah. And they'll go hire a first-time coordinator and just go out there next year and hope it works. And keep putting all the pressure on Deshaun. Like I said in that video last year. I don't think that's happening, though, Mike. I think there could be another scenario happening right now behind the scenes, quietly, just like it said in that article right there. Just like it said in that article. What did Mike Florio say? Mike Florio used a keyword there. Let me pull it back up. Right there. Quietly considering. And I think their Browns are probably that team. Like I said, I think, in my opinion, I think the Browns are that team. Because you look at all this stuff what Deshaun said, the philosophical disagreement that's very clear, and Andrew Berea's comments today. I wouldn't be surprised if the Browns, I'm not saying they are, this is alleged, this isn't sourced or anything. I'm just saying the way, if you have to, here's how you have to look at things, especially as somebody like myself, what I do now, I have to be kind of an investigator, a journalist. I'm not a fan, my fandom or anything comes last because I'm trying to give you guys the best content possible. You have to look at the ball and look how the ball goes. You start with the Deshaun, like I said, that's why I laid all this out today. Starting last year, right? Let's recap here, kind of lay out what I'm getting at here and my purpose of this main idea where I'm getting at today with the show. Deshaun last year, right? Second game of the year, I played that video. You can see he pulls him out of that game, right? You can kind of see it just looked kind of off, right? Granted, he was off the street, but he pulled him out of the game. Then we go to this year, the Pittsburgh game. And we're all on my show after the game questioning this. and I even said on my post game show after that, Deshaun doesn't fit in the system. And then we look throughout the year, the system didn't really look any different than what they've been running. It's the same generic offense with a couple trick plays, right? Then we keep going, right? And then we go to the Cardinals game, and Deshaun's doing stuff off script, and it looks great. And we go to the Ravens game, second half, a lot of off script stuff. And then we go down, and then he gets hurt. And then Joe Flacco comes in, right? Joe Flacco runs a pretty basic system, makes it look great. Then we get to the playoff game, and it's a complete debacle. And now we go to fire. Stay with me. Watch as the ball goes. Right now we go to suddenly last week out of nowhere, surprised everybody. Firing Andrew Berry, or excuse me, not firing Andrew Berry, firing Alex Van Pelt. Stump Mitchell has been here a long time, is a great running back coach, and the tight end coach. Surprise firings. And on that report that day, too, there was something else that was said. Some players didn't agree with it. That was put in that report that day. I think it was Justine, somebody who broke it. I think it was maybe Justine Anderson. Whoever broke that story first put that very clear on that tweet that some players were not happy with these firings. So that's not a good sign. And then we go move the ball. Stay with the ball. Stay with me. All right. Then we hear rumors last week that Kevin Stefanski might be giving up play calling. And then we hear another rumor. All the Cleveland Sports Show Friday, they asked Aditi Kikabala was on. And they said, is Kevin Stefanski really the one calling the shots here? And then the same day on Friday, we go to Deshaun Watson's comments, like I played earlier, talk about how he doesn't like Kevin's philosophy of calling things, really, if we really look at it, because that's what Deshaun said he doesn't like is what Kevin does. Then we move the ball again. Then we go to Mike Florio's article yesterday. It came out last night. And we go to the next day to Andrew Berry's comments today, which I showed in the tweets. Put it all together. All right? Put it all together. We're at a divide here, people. And I just don't see if I'm Kevin Stefanski and you're asking me to take my play calling away, which you said is one of my strengths, and then you say that we're going to evaluate this. Let me go. What's the exact thing? Like I said, if I'm Kevin Stefanski looking at this, right, at all this, what Deshaun said and what Andrew Berry said today, right here. If I'm Andrew Berry, you're saying that will I call plays next year? And you're saying it depends on where we land with the staff, which kind of tells me they're the one that's picking the coordinator here, the front office and the ownership, people above Kevin. And you're telling me it's one of my strengths, but then you're telling me it's my decision. You said two different things there. That's why I keep going back to this tweet, because that is very telling what Andrew Berry, that right there on that screen, folks, gives a lot of way. And like I said, if I'm Kevin Stefanski reading all this today and seeing that and hearing that today, there's 6 other head coaching jobs available out there. Looking at some of the candidates available that have been mentioned, I think Kevin Stefanski is probably better than most of them. Some of these first timers, I think, I think Ben Johnson, I think is going to get the Washington job. I think he'll be a great head coach. I think I would probably take Ben Johnson on a team right now over maybe Kevin, because I think what he's doing at Lions and with the Lions right now is unbelievable. But Kevin is probably a 2-time coach of the year. Kevin has done some pretty good things like this year. It was pretty incredible. Led the Browns to the first playoff appearance and won a playoff game in 2020, his first year, won coach of the year. I think Kevin could probably get a job right now with the Panthers. I mean, compared to some of these other names being thrown out there, I think Kevin's probably a better coach than a lot of these other names out there, like I said. But if you're the Cleveland Browns looking at this, we know what Kevin is. Like Andrew Berry said, we're happy with Kevin. We're happy with him. But when you have a market that's like this coaching market is something we've never seen before in offseason, I don't think. Not in my lifetime. Where you got Bill Belichick, the GOAT, Jim Harbaugh available, Mike Vrabel, a great coach, available. I mean, there are some heavy hitters out there. Those 3 alone. And you got Bob Quinn in the building. You got Jim Schwartz, who also with Bill in the building. I'm just saying, you look at Deshaun's comments. Would I be surprised? Could this lead to a mutually parting ways? Maybe. Because like I said, if I'm Kevin Stefanski and I'm looking at all this, I mean, you want me to give up play calling, which is my strength, like you even told me is my strength. But then, so I have to give that, then I'll get an extension? That's not going to work. It's not going to work. You can't ask a coach to do something that he's not equipped to do. Or that you can't take his strength that you said and make him do otherwise. That causes more divide and more friction. And not only that, the guys you're interviewing too are first-time offensive coordinators. That's not what we need. We need experience. And so, and like I said earlier, you go back to that Texans game, though, why I've questioned Kevin in the past, is Kevin the guy that can get us over the hump? So if I'm the Browns and I got Bill Belichick out there, the GOAT available, and I feel like I can get him and make a run at him, like the article says, you kind of have to do it. And I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens this week and next week. We're going to keep following along. If something happens, we'll go live and do a breaking live. I know some people have different opinions about all this. This is just my observation of everything. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this, there could be a parting ways. Because I just don't. If they go next year, if they go into next year with a new offensive coordinator who's never called plays, and maybe Kevin's still calling plays, or this guy's trying to call plays for the first time, and they fall short, which if I had to bet probably would be the outcome, it's over. That's it. It's done. Start rebuilding. It's done. Myles Garrett, you think Myles Garrett's going to stay another year for this shit? No. The Njoku, all these guys, they're not going to stay around. They're getting older. They're in their primes. The guys want to win now. The Browns need to win now. Deshaun Watson has to win right now. He needs to win too for his career. I mean, he's going in now he'd be going into year 4, and he's trying to get another contract. It's over. It'd be over. Nick Chubb. We don't know when Nick Chubb's gonna be coming off the injury. Like, I mean, we usually have him under contract. Not many. It's over. If they go into if they repeat what happened the last 4 years, any one of those years next year, it's it. It's a wrap. It's over. So, if I'm the Browns, if I were the Cleveland Browns, if I can get Bill Belichick, I'm doing it. I think it's time, just like Andrew Berry said, we'll attack 2024 with a, quote, fresh perspective. They need somebody in there who knows how to win. Obviously, Bill knows how to win. He's the GOAT. 6 Super Bowls as a head coach. And I think you let him collaborate with Deshaun and picking the offensive coordinator that's proven, maybe an Eric Bieniemy, who Houston almost hired, who Deshaun liked in Houston, but Houston didn't hire him. Let Deshaun and Bill can be a CEO coach and come in, and Bill will be able to get this team over the hump, I believe. And so, and he also has a relationship with Jim Schwartz. You can keep Jim Schwartz in there. If they can make a run at Bill Belichick, they got to do it. So, and I think you got it. Like I said, you got to get somebody in there that's going to run an offense that fits Deshaun's skill set, which will elevate everyone else in the offense. Because if you don't, you're going to keep getting the same result. So that's my take for all this today. I went a little longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure I broke everything down. I'm sorry if I repeated myself today a bunch of times, but I'm trying. If I do, that's good because I'm trying to get a point across and make it very clear to you guys what I think is actually going on right now in Berea. So you guys leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think's going on. Like I said, I think I won't be surprised if by the end of all this, there could be some drastic change, because if they don't, and they keep trying to just put puzzle pieces to fit into this, whatever they've been trying to do for the last 4 years, especially since Deshaun's been here, I don't think it's really going to work as well. I think you're going to keep getting the same result. And so I thought Deshaun's comments, though, on Friday, which didn't really get much traction, though, were very telling. And that's very alarming. And I think what Andrew Berry said today raised some eyebrows. And so we'll see what happens. Like I said, leave a comment below what you think's going on. And that's all I got for you guys today. I'm a little tired from that. It's a lot to break down. But, since I'm what you can do for me that'll help me feel better, hit the subscribe button. Like this video, share this video, leave a comment below what you think, and yeah. I'll see you guys next one. I'm out of here. Gone.